I'll never forget the moment I walked into that mahogany-paneled office and saw her sitting there. Veronica, my stepmother, dressed like she owned the world, smiling like a cat who'd already swallowed the canary. She glanced at me, then back at the lawyer, completely unbothered by my presence. Olivia, sweetheart, she purred. Isn't this exciting? Your father would have wanted us to work together on this. My father, the man who forgot my birthday for 7 years straight. The man who sent a check instead of showing up to my college graduation. And now, after his sudden death, I was supposed to believe he'd left me something out of love. I didn't believe it for a second. But my grandmother, Eleanor, she was different. She'd been the only one who remembered me, who sent me handwritten letters, who whispered to me at family gatherings, "One day, baby girl, you'll understand why I did what I did." As I took my seat across from Veronica, I felt Eleanor's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. The lawyer cleared his throat and opened the file. And that's where my story truly began. Before I share this chapter of my life, please, if you're listening to this right now, help me prove my mum wrong. She said no one cares about stories anymore. But I believe stories still matter. They heal us, they teach us, and sometimes, they save us. Subscribe to Queen's Voice, and let's keep breathing life into tales that refuse to die. Now, let's begin. I arrived at the law office 20 minutes early. Not because I was eager, not because I thought I'd inherit anything meaningful, but because I'd learned a long time ago that showing up prepared was the only way to survive in a family that had spent years trying to erase me. The building was one of those old downtown structures with marble floors and brass fixtures that screamed, "Old money." I'd never been comfortable in places like this. My entire adult life had been studio apartments, shared rides, and dollar store coffee. This world, my father's world, had always existed behind a glass wall I could see through but never touch. I pushed open the heavy door to the conference room. And there she was. Veronica Hartman sat at the head of the table like a queen presiding over her court. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon. Her cream-coloured suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. She had a leather portfolio open in front of her, a gold pen resting on top, and that smile. That calculated, venomous smile. "Olivia!" She stood up, arms extended like we were long-lost friends. "Oh, darling. Come in. This must be so hard for you." I didn't move toward her embrace. I simply nodded, and took the seat furthest from where she stood. Her smile tightened, just slightly. "Still grieving. I understand. Richard's death has been difficult for all of us." Richard. Not your father. Not Dad. Just Richard. As if using his first name somehow made her claim to him more legitimate than mine. My half-sister Isabella slouched in the chair next to Veronica, thumbs flying across her phone screen. She was 22, fresh out of college with a marketing degree she'd never use, funded entirely by my father's wallet. She didn't even look up when I entered. "Bella, say hello to your sister," Veronica said, with forced cheerfulness. "Hey." Isabella's eyes never left her phone. I didn't bother responding. The door opened again, and my father's business partner, Marcus Chen, walked in. He'd been Richard's right hand for 15 years, managing the commercial real estate portfolio that had made my father wealthy. Marcus gave me a brief, sympathetic nod. At least someone in this room had basic human decency. Then came the lawyer. Arthur Pemberton was exactly what you'd expect from a man who'd spent 40 years managing the estates of the wealthy. Silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the kind of measured calm that came from seeing every type of family drama imaginable. "Good afternoon, everyone." He set his briefcase on the table and pulled out a thick folder. "Thank you for coming. I know this is a difficult time, but we need to address the matter of Richard Hartman's estate." Veronica leaned forward, hands folded. "Arthur, before we begin, I just want to say how much Richard valued your counsel over the years, and I hope we can handle this process with the grace and unity he would have wanted." Unity. The word tasted like poison in my mouth. There had been no unity when my father remarried 6 months after my mother's death. No unity when he moved Veronica and her daughter into a house 3 times the size of the one I'd grown up in. No unity when I had to take out student loans while Isabella got a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday. But now, suddenly, Veronica wanted unity. Of course, Arthur said politely. He opened the folder and adjusted his reading glasses. Let's begin. The Last Will and Testament of Richard James Hartman, dated the 15th of March 2024. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned that trick working retail during college: never let them see you sweat. Arthur began reading the standard legal language. Then came the specific bequests. To Marcus Chen, my trusted partner and friend, I leave my collection of first edition business books and my Rolex Submariner, in gratitude for 20 years of loyalty and friendship. Marcus nodded, clearly moved. To the Mercy Children's Hospital, I leave a donation of $50,000 to continue the work they do for families in need. Veronica's fingers drummed on the table. She didn't care about the small stuff. She was waiting for the big reveal. To my daughter Isabella Hartman, I leave a trust fund in the amount of $200,000 to be disbursed in quarterly installments, beginning on her 25th birthday, provided she maintains employment or pursues further education. Isabella finally looked up from her phone. Wait, what? I don't get it all at once. Bella, hush, Veronica whispered sharply. We'll discuss it later. Arthur continued. To my wife, Veronica Hartman, I leave our primary residence at 847 Willow Creek Drive, along with all furnishings and personal effects, as well as a monthly stipend from my investment portfolio in the amount of $15,000. Veronica smiled. $15,000 a month for doing nothing. She'd landed exactly where she'd planned. Then Arthur paused. He glanced at me over his reading glasses, and something in his expression shifted. Not pity. Something else. Almost like respect. And now we come to the matter of the Silverwood Cliff estate. The room went silent. I'd heard about Silverwood my entire childhood. It was my grandmother, Eleanor's pride and joy. A sprawling coastal mansion, perched on 3 acres of cliffside property, overlooking the Pacific. The house had been built in the 1922 by my great-grandfather, a shipping magnate, who'd made his fortune in the years after World War I. Eleanor had spent her entire life there, hosting charity galas, family gatherings, and summer parties that were legendary in our social circle. But I'd only been there a handful of times. My father had always made excuses for why I couldn't visit more often. Grandmother needs her rest. It's not a good time. Maybe next summer. After my mother died, the invitations stopped completely. But Eleanor never forgot me. She sent cards, letters, small gifts on my birthday, and sometimes, late at night, she'd call me just to talk. She'd tell me stories about the house, about the gardens, about the view of the sunset from the master bedroom balcony. That house has a soul, Olivia, she'd said during our last conversation, just 3 weeks before she died. And souls recognize each other. Remember that. I hadn't understood what she meant. Until now. Arthur cleared his throat and continued reading. The Silverwood Cliff estate, including all buildings, land, furnishings, and associated assets, currently valued at approximately $1,360,000, is hereby bequeathed to my granddaughter, Olivia Marie Hartman. The words hit me like a physical blow. Veronica's head snapped toward me, her smile frozen in place. I'm sorry. What? Arthur kept reading, his voice steady. Furthermore, full operational control and decision-making authority regarding the estate shall rest solely with Olivia Marie Hartman. No other family member, including, but not limited to Richard Hartman's spouse, or children from any marriage, shall have the right to sell, lease, modify, or make financial decisions regarding the property without Olivia's explicit, written consent. This is ridiculous, Veronica said, her voice sharp. Richard and I discussed this property many times. We had plans. Mrs. Hartman, please, Arthur interrupted gently. There's more. He turned the page, and I saw Eleanor's signature at the bottom, strong and clear despite her age. "This wasn't my father's will. This was my grandmother's," Arthur continued. "Any attempt to contest this bequest, to coerce or manipulate Olivia Hartman into relinquishing control, or to circumvent her authority through legal or financial means, will result in the immediate transfer of the entire Silverwood estate to the Children's Advocacy Foundation, a registered non-profit organization. In such an event, all family members will be permanently barred from the property, and all associated assets will be liquidated for charitable purposes." The room exploded. "This is insane." Veronica was on her feet. Eleanor was 93 years old when she signed this. She clearly wasn't in her right mind. "Mrs. Hartman," Arthur said firmly, "I have documentation from 3 separate physicians confirming Eleanor Hartman's mental competency at the time this will was executed. I also have video testimony, recorded in the presence of 2 witnesses, in which Mrs. Hartman explains her reasoning for these decisions. Would you like me to play it?" Veronica's face went white. Isabella was staring at me like I'd just stolen her inheritance. "This isn't fair. That house should be for the whole family." Marcus looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. "And me?" I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, my eyes burning with tears. I refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of them. Eleanor had done this. My grandmother, who'd watched me struggle through college while my father bought Isabella a convertible. Who'd seen me work 2 jobs to pay rent, while Veronica redecorated their house for the 3rd time. Who'd known, somehow, that I would need this protection. "There's one final clause," Arthur said quietly. He looked directly at me. "Olivia, your grandmother left you a sealed letter. I'm instructed to give it to you privately, after this meeting concludes." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Veronica gathered her things with sharp, angry movements. "This isn't over, Olivia. That property is worth over $1 million. It should be managed by someone who understands real estate. Someone with business experience. Someone like you?" I found my voice, and it came out steadier than I expected. Someone who married into this family and immediately started calculating how much everything was worth. Her eyes narrowed. "You ungrateful little—" "Mrs. Hartman," Arthur interrupted, "I strongly advise against making threats in my presence. As I stated, any attempt to coerce or manipulate Olivia will result in the complete loss of the estate for everyone." Veronica grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. "Come on, Isabella. We're leaving." Isabella scrambled after her, throwing one last venomous look in my direction. The door slammed shut. Marcus stood slowly. "Olivia, congratulations. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman. She knew exactly what she was doing." He extended his hand, and I shook it, grateful for the warmth in his grip. "If you need any advice about the property, I'm happy to help. No strings attached." "Thank you, Marcus." After he left, it was just me and Arthur in the quiet conference room. He pulled an envelope from his briefcase, cream-colored paper, sealed with wax, my name written in Eleanor's elegant cursive. She recorded the video testimony 2 months before she passed. Arthur said softly. "She knew this would be contested. She prepared for everything." He handed me the letter. "Your grandmother was one of the sharpest people I've ever known. She loved you very much, Olivia." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. "Take your time," Arthur said. "I'll be in my office if you need anything." He left me alone. I sat there for a long moment, holding the letter, feeling the weight of it. Then, carefully, I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're sitting in that stuffy lawyer's office wondering what on earth I was thinking. I was thinking about you, sweetheart. I've always been thinking about you. I watched you grow up in the shadow of neglect, and it broke my heart every single day. Your father, my son, made choices I couldn't control. He chose comfort over character. He chose a woman who saw him as a bank account, and in doing so, he forgot the beautiful, brilliant daughter he already had. But I never forgot you. Silverwood isn't just a house, Olivia. It's a promise. It's proof that you matter, that you were seen, that you were loved. I know Veronica will fight this. She's been eyeing this property since the day she married Richard. imagining it as her personal resort or investment opportunity. She doesn't understand what Silverwood really is: a home built on love, sacrifice, and family bonds that money can't buy. But you understand, don't you? You've always understood. This estate is yours now. Not because of blood, not because of money, but because you're the only one who will protect its heart. Live there, love there, fill it with laughter and life again. And when the world tries to take it from you, and they will try, remember that you are Eleanor Hartman's granddaughter. You are stronger than you know. All my love. Grandmother. I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my chest. Then I let myself cry. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief, of vindication, of love that had transcended death itself. My grandmother had seen me, really seen me, and she'd made sure that no one could ever make me invisible again. I stood up, tucked the letter into my purse, and walked out of that office with my head high. Veronica wanted a war? She was about to learn that Eleanor Hartman's granddaughter didn't surrender. Not now, not ever. I drove to Silverwood alone. The coastal highway stretched before me, like a ribbon of possibility, the Pacific Ocean glittering to my left, under the late afternoon sun. I'd made this drive only a handful of times in my life, and each time it had felt like entering a different world, one where I didn't quite belong, where I was always a visitor rather than family. But today was different. Today, I wasn't visiting, I was coming home. The gate appeared exactly as I remembered it, wrought iron with an elegant H woven into the design, flanked by stone pillars covered in climbing roses. I pulled up to the keypad, and my hand hesitated over the numbers. Then I remembered. Eleanor's birthday. She'd told me once, years ago, laughing as she confided it to 10-year-old me like we were conspirators. It's the simplest passwords that people always overlook, darling. I punched in 0724. The gate swung open. My breath caught as I drove through. The driveway curved through manicured gardens, lavender, roses, jasmine, all slightly overgrown now, but still beautiful. And then, there it was. Silverwood. The mansion rose 3 stories, painted a soft grey-blue with white trim, wraparound porches on both the first and second floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the ocean beyond. The architecture was classic craftsman style, with clean lines and natural materials that made the house feel like it had grown organically from the cliff itself. I parked in the circular drive and just sat there for a moment, staring. $1.3 million. The number felt absurd. I'd spent the last 5 years of my life calculating whether I could afford the name brand cereal or if I needed to go generic. I'd skipped dentist appointments because the copay was too high. I'd worked double shifts at a coffee shop while taking night classes for my business degree. And now I owned this. My phone buzzed. A text from Veronica. We need to talk. This is a family matter, and you're being incredibly selfish. I deleted it, without responding. Another buzz. Isabella this time. You literally don't even know how to manage a property like this. You're going to run it into the ground. Delete. Then my father's business partner, Marcus. Congratulations again, Olivia. If you decide to tour the property, you'll find everything is in good order. Eleanor had a property manager maintaining it until recently. His contact info's in the estate documents. Call if you need anything. I smiled. At least one person in my father's orbit had a soul. I grabbed my purse and stepped out of the car. The ocean breeze hit me immediately, salt and jasmine, and something else. Something that smelled like memory itself. I walked up the stone steps to the front door, where a lockbox hung from the handle. Arthur had given me the combination. The door swung open, and I stepped inside. Oh. The foyer was exactly as I remembered. Hardwood floors polished to a honey glow, a crystal chandelier catching the late afternoon light, a grand staircase sweeping up to the second floor. But everything was covered in white sheets, like the house had been put to sleep, waiting for someone to wake it up again. I walked through slowly, pulling sheets off furniture as I went. The living room with its stone fireplace and built-in bookshelves. The formal dining room with a table that could seat 12. The sunroom with windows on 3 sides, overlooking the gardens and the ocean beyond. In the kitchen, I found a note on the counter, written in handwriting I didn't recognize. Miss Hartman, everything is as Mrs. Eleanor requested. Utilities are on. Fridge is stocked with basics. Property maintenance is current through the end of the month. Welcome home. David Torres, property manager. I opened the fridge. Milk, eggs, butter, fresh vegetables, a bottle of white wine. On the counter, a basket of fruit and a loaf of sourdough bread from the local bakery. David Torres had never met me, but Eleanor had clearly prepared him for this moment. Have you ever inherited something you didn't know you needed? Not just the money or the property, but the feeling of being chosen, of mattering to someone even after they're gone. That's what this house was. Not just walls and floors and an ocean view. It was Eleanor's final message to me. You belong. You always have. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked out onto the back terrace. The view stole my breath. The cliff dropped away dramatically, and below, the Pacific stretched endlessly, waves crashing against the rocks in a rhythm as old as time. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold. I could see why Eleanor had loved this place. It wasn't just beautiful, it was sacred. I stood there until the sky turned purple, until the first stars appeared, until I felt something inside me shift and settle. This was mine, and I was going to fight for it. The first attack came 3 days later. I was meeting with David Torres, the property manager, a kind-faced man in his 50s who'd worked for Eleanor for over a decade when my phone rang. Unknown number. Miss Hartman, this is Gregory Sutton from Sutton & Associates. I represent Veronica Hartman in a legal matter concerning the Silverwood estate. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice level. I'm listening. My client believes there are significant irregularities in Eleanor Hartman's will, specifically regarding her mental capacity at the time of signing. We're prepared to file a formal contest, unless you're willing to discuss a more equitable distribution of assets. Equitable. What a word. Mr. Sutton, I'm sure Arthur Pemberton already told you this, but let me make it crystal clear. Any attempt to contest the will results in the entire estate going to charity. Your client gets nothing. I get nothing. Nobody wins except the Children's Advocacy Foundation. There was a pause. My client is aware of that clause. However, she believes that upon closer examination, certain elements of the will may be deemed coercive or undue influence. Then tell your client to go ahead and file. I'll see her in court. I hung up. David was watching me carefully. They're going to push hard, you know. Veronica was in your father's ear for years about this property. She saw it as her retirement plan. She saw it as an investment opportunity, I corrected. She wanted to turn it into vacation rentals, or sell it to a developer. Eleanor knew that. That's why she protected it. David nodded slowly. Your grandmother was a very wise woman. She told me once, about 6 months before she passed, that this house had a purpose, that it was meant to be a gathering place, a refuge. She said the right person would know what to do with it. Did she say I was the right person? He smiled. She said you were the only person. Over the next 2 weeks, the attacks escalated. Veronica filed 3 separate legal challenges, each one more desperate than the last. Arthur Pemberton shot them down with the precision of a surgeon, using Eleanor's meticulous documentation like a shield. The video testimony, the physician evaluations, the dated journals where Eleanor had outlined her exact wishes and reasoning. But Veronica wasn't just fighting in court. She started a whisper campaign among my father's social circle. I heard through Marcus that she was telling people I'd manipulated Eleanor in her final years, that I'd isolated her from the family, that I was unqualified to manage such a valuable property and would inevitably destroy it. The rumors didn't bother me as much as they should have. I'd spent my entire adult life being underestimated. Let Veronica talk. I had work to do. I hired a small staff. David stayed on as property manager, and I brought in a gardener to restore the grounds to their former glory. I interviewed contractors to repair some minor water damage in the East Wing. I spent hours going through Eleanor's papers, learning the history of every room, every piece of furniture, every painting on the walls. And slowly, the house came back to life. But Veronica wasn't done. One afternoon, I was in the library, cataloguing Eleanor's book collection, when my phone rang. Marcus. Olivia, I need to warn you about something. Veronica's been approaching some of your father's old business associates, trying to put together an investment group. My hand tightened on the phone. An investment group for what? She's pitching Silverwood as a luxury event venue. Weddings, corporate retreats, high-end rentals. She's telling people that you're young and inexperienced, that you'll eventually realize you can't afford the maintenance costs. And when you're desperate enough, you'll be willing to sell or lease the property to the right partnership. I felt my jaw clench. She really thinks I'm going to fail. She's counting on it, Marcus said quietly. The property taxes alone are substantial. The insurance, the upkeep, the utilities, Olivia. I don't want to discourage you, but she's not entirely wrong about the financial pressure. Unless you have significant income or savings, maintaining Silverwood will be expensive. He was right, of course. I'd been avoiding thinking about the numbers, because they were terrifying. My savings account had maybe $4,000. My income from freelance marketing work was inconsistent at best. The property taxes were due in 6 months, and they'd be close to $30,000. But I also knew something Veronica didn't. Eleanor had left me more than just a house. She'd left me a purpose. Marcus, can I ask you something? Hypothetically, if someone wanted to turn Silverwood into something sustainable, something that honored its history while also generating income, what would you suggest? There was a pause. Then, are you asking for business advice? I'm asking for help. Another pause. Then I heard the smile in his voice. Come by my office tomorrow morning. Bring coffee. Let's talk. The plan came together, over 3 weeks of intense work. Marcus connected me with a boutique hospitality consultant who specialized in historic properties. Together, we developed a vision. Silverwood wouldn't become a commercial event venue. It would become a curated retreat center, limited bookings, carefully selected guests, focused on small weddings, intimate corporate workshops, and creative residencies for artists and writers. The house would remain a home, not a hotel. We'd preserve Eleanor's aesthetic, her gardens, her vision, but we'd also make it financially sustainable. I applied for historic preservation grants. I reached out to wedding planners and corporate retreat coordinators. I created a website showcasing the property's beauty and history. And slowly, carefully, I started taking bookings. The first wedding was scheduled for 3 months, out a small ceremony for 30 guests. A young couple who fell in love with the ocean view and the intimate charm of the estate. The deposit alone covered 2 months of utilities. I was working 16-hour days, learning event coordination, hospitality management, marketing, everything I'd never planned to do but suddenly needed to master. David was invaluable, handling the day-to-day property maintenance while I focused on building the business. And then, 6 weeks after the will reading, Veronica made her final move. I was reviewing vendor contracts in the library when I heard a car in the driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the window and felt my blood run cold. Veronica's black Mercedes, and behind it, 2 more cars I didn't recognize. She'd brought reinforcements. I met them at the front door, blocking the entrance. Veronica stood there in a designer suit, flanked by 2 men in expensive clothes, potential investors. I realized. She was actually bringing people to tour the property, like she already owned it. Olivia, sweetheart. Her voice was sickeningly sweet. I hope you don't mind. I brought some colleagues to see the estate. We won't be long, just a quick walkthrough. You're not coming in. Her smile hardened. Darling, don't be difficult. These gentlemen have driven all the way from San Francisco. I don't care if they flew in from Tokyo. This is private property. And you're trespassing. One of the men stepped forward, extending his hand. Miss Hartman, I'm Robert Chen, no relation to Marcus. I'm a commercial real estate developer, and Mrs. Hartman has presented us with an interesting proposal regarding this property. Let me stop you right there, Mr. Chen. Whatever proposal Veronica presented is fraudulent. She has zero ownership stake in this property, zero authority to negotiate on its behalf, and zero chance of changing that. If she told you otherwise, she lied. Veronica's face flushed red. How dare you? How dare I? I stepped forward, and something in my voice made her take a step back. You've spent 6 weeks trying to steal this property. You've filed frivolous lawsuits, spread lies about me, and now you're bringing strangers to my home to tour it like it's for sale. Well, here's the truth, Veronica. It's not for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone. Eleanor left this house to me because she knew exactly what you'd try to do with it, and she made damn sure you couldn't. The investors were looking uncomfortable now, glancing at each other. I turned to them. Gentlemen, I apologize that you wasted your time. Veronica Hartman has no legal standing whatsoever regarding this property. If you'd like to verify that, my lawyer is Arthur Pemberton at Pemberton and Associates. He'll be happy to confirm that any business dealings with Veronica concerning Silverwood are void. Robert Chen cleared his throat. I think, perhaps there's been a miscommunication. Mrs. Hartman, you indicated that you had a controlling interest. She lied, I said flatly. She does this. She's very good at it. Veronica's composure finally cracked. You ungrateful, selfish little brat. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're going to lose this house within a year. You can't afford it. You don't know how to run it. And when the bills come due, and you're drowning in debt, don't come crying to me for help. I smiled then. A real smile. Calm and confident. I won't need to. I've already booked 3 weddings, 2 corporate retreats, and a month-long artist residency. Silverwood is officially a licensed event venue as of yesterday. My first event is in 8 weeks, and I'm already projected to break even on operating costs within the first year. The colour drained from Veronica's face. Oh, and one more thing, I continued. I spoke with Arthur this morning. He's prepared to file a restraining order if you continue to harass me or attempt to access this property without permission. You'll also be liable for any financial losses I incur as a result of your interference with my business operations. I let that sink in. Then I looked at the investors again. Gentlemen, I suggest you leave now, and perhaps consider being more careful about who you trust in the future. They didn't need to be told twice. Within minutes, all 3 cars were driving away, leaving only dust and the sound of the ocean. I stood there on the front steps, my heart pounding, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I'd done it. I'd faced her down, and I'd won. Inside the house, my phone was ringing. I walked back to the library and picked it up. Arthur Pemberton. Olivia, I just received a very interesting call from Veronica's lawyer. They're dropping all legal challenges to the will, effective immediately. I sank into Eleanor's favourite reading chair. They're giving up? They're out of options, Arthur said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Between the video testimony, the physician evaluations, and now your successful business launch, they have no case. Veronica knows it. Her lawyer knows it. It's over. Over. The word felt surreal. Arthur, thank you. For everything. Thank your grandmother, he said gently. She orchestrated this entire thing. I was just the instrument. After we hung up, I sat there in the quiet library, surrounded by Eleanor's books, and finally let myself feel it. Relief. Victory. And something deeper. A sense of rightness. Like puzzle pieces, clicking into place. Eleanor had known. She'd known Veronica would fight. She'd known I'd be scared. She'd known I'd doubt myself. But she'd also known I'd rise to the challenge. Because I was her granddaughter. And Hartman women didn't break. The first wedding at Silverwood happened on a Saturday in October. I woke up at 5 a.m, my stomach, a knot of excitement and terror. I'd planned every detail obsessively. The flower arrangements, the catering timeline, the setup crew's schedule, the weather contingency plan. I'd walked through every possible disaster scenario in my mind 100 times. But as I stood on the terrace, watching the sun rise over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Eleanor had stood here countless times, watching this same sunrise. She'd hosted parties and gatherings, filled this house with laughter and love and life. And now, finally, after months of being frozen in time, Silverwood was about to fulfill its purpose again. David arrived at 6:30 with the setup crew. By 8, the gardens were transformed. White chairs, arranged in perfect rows facing the ocean, an archway woven with roses and jasmine, lanterns hanging from the trees for the evening reception. The bride, Sarah, arrived at noon with her bridesmaids. She was a kindergarten teacher, marrying her college sweetheart, and when she walked onto the terrace and saw the view, she burst into tears. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's exactly what I imagined." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm so glad." The ceremony was at 4 o'clock. 30 guests gathered in the garden, and when Sarah walked down the aisle on her father's arm, the late afternoon sun caught her dress and made her glow like she was lit from within. The groom cried. The officiant's voice carried on the ocean breeze, and when they kissed, everyone applauded, the sound mixing with the crash of waves below. It was beautiful. It was exactly what this place was meant for. During the reception, I stayed mostly behind the scenes, coordinating with caterers and making sure everything ran smoothly. But at one point, I stepped out onto the upper terrace, the one outside Eleanor's old bedroom, just to breathe. "Miss Hartman?" I turned. Sarah's grandmother, a tiny woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, was standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry, this area is private," I started. She waved a hand. "I know, dear. I used to come here, you know. Years ago. Your grandmother hosted a charity luncheon. Must have been 15 years back. I never forgot this view." "You knew Eleanor?" "Only briefly. But she was remarkable. She had this way of making everyone feel seen." The woman smiled. "I can see you have the same gift. My granddaughter hasn't stopped talking about how kind you've been, how you helped her plan everything. You've made this day magical for her." Something in my chest cracked open. "That means everything to me. Thank you." After she left, I stood there alone, looking out at the ocean, and let myself cry. Happy tears this time. Grateful tears. Eleanor was right. This house had a soul, and it recognized mine. Over the next 6 months, Silverwood transformed from a forgotten estate into something alive and thriving. I hosted 12 weddings, ranging from intimate ceremonies of 20 people to larger gatherings of 75. Each one was unique, carefully curated to honor both the couple's vision and the property's character. I turned away bookings that felt too commercial, too focused on Instagram moments, rather than genuine celebration. This wasn't about maximizing profit, it was about preserving what made Silverwood special. The corporate retreats were equally successful. Small companies, creative agencies, non-profit boards, groups that wanted somewhere beautiful and inspiring for strategic planning or team building. I worked with a local chef to create menus featuring coastal ingredients. I partnered with a yoga instructor who led morning sessions on the terrace. I curated a library of business and creativity books in the sunroom. Every guest left a review praising not just the beauty of the property, but its feeling, the sense of peace, the way it made them slow down and connect with each other. That was Eleanor's legacy. Not the property value or the ocean view, but the space she'd created for human connection. And the artist residencies, those became my favorite. I offered month-long stays to writers, painters, photographers, and musicians who needed time and space to create. They stayed in the renovated East Wing, had access to the gardens and the library, and in exchange, they simply had to be present, to create, to contribute to Silverwood's story. One writer, a woman named Patricia, who was working on a novel about 3 generations of women, told me on her last day, "This place gave me permission to tell the truth." I don't know how else to explain it. I knew exactly what she meant. The financial side was tight, but sustainable. Between the events, the residencies, and a small but growing gift shop featuring local artists' work, I was covering expenses with a modest profit margin. I'd even started building a savings cushion for unexpected repairs. I hired a small team. David remained as property manager, and I brought on 2 part-time coordinators to help with events. We worked like a family, protecting this place together. But not everyone was happy about my success. 8 months after the will reading, I received a certified letter. It was from Isabella. I opened it, standing in the kitchen, my coffee growing cold as I read. Olivia, I know we haven't been close. I know you probably hate me. But I need to tell you something, because I can't live with this anymore. Mom is planning something. I don't know all the details, but she's been meeting with her lawyer and some financial advisor. She keeps talking about how you're vulnerable because the business is new, how one bad event or lawsuit could destroy you financially. She's looking for ways to create problems for you. Vendors who might sue, guests who might claim injury, anything that could force you to sell Silverwood to cover legal costs. I don't agree with what she's doing. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted Dad to love me, and I thought if I went along with Mom's plans, if I acted like I didn't care about you, maybe he'd finally see me. But he never did, and now he's gone, and I'm realizing I lost a sister for nothing. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you should know. Isabella. I read the letter 3 times, my hands trembling. Then I called Arthur Pemberton. Arthur, I need your advice. If someone were trying to sabotage my business, what kind of protections could I put in place? He didn't ask why I was asking. He just listened as I explained Isabella's warning, and then he was quiet for a long moment. Olivia, I'm going to be very honest with you. If Veronica is determined to destroy you financially, she has resources to make your life very difficult. Frivolous lawsuits, false complaints to licensing boards, negative online reviews from fake accounts. These things are hard to prove and expensive to fight. My stomach dropped. So what do I do? You make Silverwood bulletproof, he said simply. Liability insurance, get the highest coverage you can afford. Document everything. Every contract, every guest interaction, every maintenance record. Keep your books immaculate. And if anything seems even slightly suspicious, a vendor who's suddenly hostile, a guest who seems to be looking for problems, shut it down immediately. I spent the next 2 weeks implementing every safeguard I could think of. Increased insurance coverage, security cameras at key locations, detailed liability waivers for every guest, a crisis management protocol. I even hired a reputation management consultant to monitor online reviews and social media mentions. It was exhausting and expensive, but I wasn't going to let Veronica take this away from me. The attack came 6 weeks later, exactly as Isabella had warned. A couple who'd booked a small wedding sent a threatening letter, claiming that their elderly grandfather had tripped on the terrace steps during the ceremony and injured his hip. They were demanding $50,000 in damages, threatening a lawsuit if I didn't pay immediately. I reviewed the security footage from that day. The grandfather in question had been perfectly fine throughout the entire event. He'd danced at the reception. He'd been laughing and drinking champagne. This was fabricated. I forwarded everything to Arthur, along with witness statements from other guests, and my event coordinator who'd been present the entire time. This is textbook fraud, Arthur said when we spoke. The question is whether they're working independently or if someone put them up to it. 2 days later, we had our answer. The couple's lawyer was the same firm Veronica had used to contest the will. She paid them, I said, my voice hollow. She actually paid people to fake an injury and sue me. We can't prove that, Arthur said carefully, but the connection is suggestive. I'm going to respond to their demand with our evidence and a counter-threat of filing a fraud complaint. My guess is they'll disappear. He was right. Within a week, the couple withdrew their claim and vanished. But it didn't stop there. Over the next 3 months, I dealt with a health inspector showing up unannounced because of an anonymous complaint about food safety, despite the fact that I used only licensed, insured caterers. A fake 1-star review claiming Silverwood was a scam and dangerous from an account that had never actually booked an event. A vendor who suddenly tried to back out of a contract 2 days before a wedding, claiming I'd violated terms I'd never agreed to, until I produced the actual signed contract proving otherwise. Each attack was relatively small. None of them succeeded. But they were relentless, and they were clearly coordinated. Veronica was trying to bleed me dry, through 1,000 small cuts. One night, after dealing with yet another manufactured crisis, I sat in Eleanor's library with a glass of wine and just cried. Not from sadness, from rage, from exhaustion. How much more could I take? And then I saw it. A book on the shelf I'd never noticed before. Not one of Eleanor's usual collection of classics or art books. This one was thin, bound in blue leather, with no title on the spine. I pulled it down and opened it. It was a journal. Eleanor's handwriting filled the pages. I flipped to a random entry, dated 3 years before she died. Veronica came by today, asking about Silverwood again. She has this way of making suggestions, sound like casual conversation, but I know what she's doing. She wants me to sign the property over to Richard, so that when I'm gone, she'll have control of it. I smiled and changed the subject, but inside, I was furious. She thinks I'm a foolish old woman who can be manipulated. She thinks I don't see her calculating the property value every time she visits. She thinks I'll eventually give in. But she doesn't know what I know. That real strength isn't about winning every battle. It's about protecting what matters, even when it costs you something. Olivia understands this. She's been fighting her whole life, with grace and dignity. She doesn't know it yet, but she's already stronger than Veronica will ever be. That's why Silverwood will be hers. Not because of blood, because of character. I closed the journal and held it against my chest. Eleanor had known. All of it. She'd seen Veronica's manipulation years before I did, and she'd planned accordingly. She'd left me Silverwood, not just as an inheritance, but as a test, a challenge. Could I protect it? Could I build something meaningful? Could I rise above the pettiness and greed, and prove that love was stronger than money? I stood up, wiped my eyes, and pulled out my phone. I called Marcus. Marcus, I need a favor. A big one. 2 weeks later, I hosted a special event at Silverwood. A charity gala benefiting the Children's Advocacy Foundation, the same organization that would have received the estate if Veronica's legal challenges had succeeded. I invited everyone from my father's social circle, business associates, charity board members, people who'd heard Veronica's whisper campaign about me being unqualified and reckless. And I invited Veronica herself. She came, of course. She couldn't resist the opportunity to see what I'd done with the place, to look for weaknesses, to gloat if I'd failed. But when she arrived, she didn't find failure. She found a transformed estate, glowing with lights and filled with laughter. The gardens were immaculate. The house sparkled. A string quartet played on the terrace. Guests in evening wear sipped champagne and praised the beauty of the property. I greeted her at the door, wearing a navy dress. Eleanor had left me simple, elegant, powerful. Veronica, I'm so glad you could make it. Her smile was tight. Olivia, what a lovely event. Thank you. I wanted to celebrate Silverwood's first year as an event venue. We've hosted 42 events, generated enough revenue to cover all operating costs, plus create an endowment for ongoing preservation, and we've been featured in 3 wedding magazines. I paused. Eleanor would have been so proud. I watched the words land like punches. During the gala, I gave a brief speech thanking everyone for their support. I talked about Eleanor's vision for Silverwood as a gathering place. I shared stories from couples who'd gotten married here, artists who'd created here, corporate teams who'd found breakthrough ideas here. And then, I showed a video. It was Eleanor's video testimony from the will, the one Arthur had referenced during the reading. In it, Eleanor sat in this very library, looking directly into the camera, and explained exactly why she'd left Silverwood to me. My granddaughter Olivia has spent her life being underestimated, Eleanor said, her voice clear and strong, despite her age. She's been overlooked, dismissed, treated as if she didn't matter, but I've watched her build a life from nothing. I've watched her work 2 jobs to pay for college. I've watched her face rejection and hardship with dignity. On screen, Eleanor smiled. Silverwood needs someone who understands that a house is more than property value. It needs someone who will protect its heart. And Olivia is the only person I trust to do that. The room was completely silent. Eleanor continued. To those who might question my decision, particularly my daughter-in-law, Veronica, I want to be very clear. This choice wasn't made out of spite or favoritism. It was made out of love and wisdom. Olivia earned this. And if you're watching this, sweetheart, I hope you know. You were always enough. You were always seen. You were always loved. The video ended. I looked out at the crowd and saw tears on several faces. Marcus was smiling. The charity director looked moved. And Veronica? She was pale, her composure finally, completely shattered. After the gala, as guests were leaving, Veronica approached me one last time. You think you've won, she said quietly. You think this little show proves something. I met her gaze steadily. I don't need to prove anything, Veronica. Silverwood speaks for itself. Eleanor speaks for herself. And, honestly, I'm done fighting with you. You can spend the rest of your life being bitter about what you didn't get, or you can move on and find your own purpose. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. She turned and walked away. I never saw her again. A year and a half after Eleanor's death, I stood on the terrace at sunset, exactly where I'd stood that first day. Silverwood was thriving. The business was profitable. The gardens were pristine. The house was filled with life and purpose. But more than that, I was thriving. I'd learned to run a business. I'd built a team I trusted. I'd created something meaningful from the ashes of my father's neglect and Veronica's greed. I'd proven that Eleanor's faith in me wasn't misplaced. My phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. Hey, I'm in town this weekend. Could we maybe get coffee? No pressure. Just, I'd like to try. I smiled and typed back. Saturday at 10? There's a good place near the estate. She responded immediately. I'll be there. It wouldn't erase the past. It wouldn't fix everything that had been broken between us. But it was a start. Because that's what Eleanor had taught me, in the end. That legacy isn't about money or property. It's about what you build, who you protect, and whether you choose love over bitterness. I raised my glass of wine toward the sunset, toward the ocean, toward Eleanor's memory. We did it, Grandma, I whispered. Silverwood is everything you wanted it to be, and so am I. The waves crashed below, the sky turned gold and purple, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, perfectly home. So what did I learn from all of this? I learned that the people who try hardest to take from you are often the ones who've never built anything themselves. Veronica spent so much energy trying to steal what Eleanor created that she never stopped to create something of her own. And in the end, that emptiness consumed her. But I also learned something more important, that love is the most powerful inheritance anyone can leave behind. Eleanor didn't just give me a house. She gave me proof that I mattered, that I was seen, that even when the world told me I wasn't enough, someone believed I was everything. And that belief? It changed my life. Today, Silverwood hosts over 60 events a year. We've expanded the artist residency program. We've partnered with local schools to offer scholarships for underprivileged students to experience the ocean and the arts. The estate has become exactly what Eleanor envisioned, a place where love, creativity, and community flourish. As for my family, my father's legacy crumbled under the weight of his own choices. Veronica's reputation never recovered from the charity gala. Isabella and I meet for coffee once a month now, slowly rebuilding what was lost. It's awkward sometimes, but it's real. And me? I wake up every morning in Eleanor's house, my house, and I get to protect something beautiful. I get to create joy for strangers who become friends. I get to prove, every single day, that perseverance and integrity will always triumph over greed. When the people who hurt you are finally defeated, you don't celebrate by gloating or revenge. You celebrate by living well, by building something they could never destroy, by choosing grace over bitterness. That's the real victory. Eleanor knew that all along, and now, so do I. If my story touched you, hit that subscribe button for more emotional tales from Queen's Voice. And even if it didn't, come on, subscribe anyway. I'll win you over next time. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been underestimated by family? How did you prove them wrong? I want to hear your story. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and let's keep the stories alive. Thanks for watching. And remember, you are seen, you are valued, you are enough. Until next time, this is Queen's Voice.